welcome to the Americans for Limited Government podcast. I am Frank McCaffrey. Please subscribe, and I am joined by ALG President Rick Manning. Subscribe to our YouTube page. Rick, a million things going on right now. One of the things that's striking is Bernie Sanders has a Green New Deal proposal, which is environmentalism and socialism all at its best, but isn't very likely to happen, and if so, will it destroy the American economy?
Well, okay, Bernie Sanders' new Green New Deal would, because we know this because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez initially introduced this, and they wrote an analysis of how they were going to get it done, which got taken down because the left didn't want this to be exposed. But we're going to have to take them at their word. So here's what happens under the Green New Deal. If you're going to achieve the lowering of the carbon footprint within 10 years, because they're now 2 years into this, so within 10 years, cows. The state of Wisconsin, you will no longer be the dairy state. There will be no cows allowed. That's why they need us all to become vegetarians. So you won't have cows. Here's what else you won't have. You won't have an internal combustion engine, because they need to get rid of the internal combustion engine and replace it with some kind of electric vehicle. And they need to do that in order to meet their zero carbon footprint goal in 10 years. They also will be getting rid of all the hydraulic fracturing and all the oil production in this country, wiping out the job gains in Pennsylvania and Ohio and elsewhere, and through liquefied natural gas in Texas. And so you're going to have they will be wiped out and will no longer be viable. So just on those things, you would effectively wreck the economy in its entirety. So what will all those people be doing? Well, Bernie Sanders has an idea. He wants to put everybody to work in green jobs. Now, last time we did this, the Obama administration promised that we were going to get all these people working in green jobs. And what we discovered was that there weren't any green jobs. What they ended up counting were support jobs that were non-green jobs, but that supported the green jobs. So if you were a truck driver delivering wind turbine blades, that was considered to be a green job.
You know, there's a lot of those down here in Texas. There's a lot of those wind turbine propellers being driven by, and they take up half the highway. They're huge, and there's a huge wind farm population, tons of wind farms down here, and it's in impoverished counties in this part of the state. And I must note that only a handful of people actually make money off these wind farms. And
yeah, once they get built, there's no money to be made. But more importantly than that, they are a very effective and efficient way of producing electricity. So they actually cost more. Their carbon footprint for the wind farms is bigger than the electricity that they generate. So they're a net negative in terms of what the Bernie Sanders people say they want. They also have this great idea that they're going to get people to provide free childhood education so they truly can get cradle to grave indoctrination. They want to have indoctrination at the early childhood development level, and have government employees basically take your kids when they're age 6 months and put them into a government facility to educate them. That's the idea. They don't want parents to be educating their kids. They believe that they need to take over the nurture aspect of human development, and that if they do so, they will develop nice little bots who will follow instructions from a government from above. So that's one of the things they want to do. Just look at Bernie Sanders' website, and when he talks about where the jobs are going to come from, it is a scary prescription for the future by a scary little man.
And we have seen the liberals try these green jobs before, and it was a disaster. You remember we talked a lot about Harry Reid pushing for green jobs in Nevada at the height of the recession, and it just made matters worse. It was only a handful of people who made money off of it.
Well, the only people who make money are the Silicon Valley investors and Al Gore, who lends the money. The federal government puts tons of money in to develop these jobs, but as we saw with Solyndra, that money, what ended up happening was we invested in it, and then it went belly up, and the technology they developed got shipped to China. What we saw with A123 battery was the U.S. government, the taxpayer, invested in it, and the technology they developed, and then it went belly up. And the technology that they developed got sold for a penny on the dollar to the Chinese. So the Chinese got the battery technology that was paid for by the U.S. government, by the taxpayer, and it ended up and the Chinese said, thank you very much, and bought it at a penny on the dollar. So yeah, we can do all sorts of, it was proven to be a failure in the Obama administration. They couldn't find any green jobs that they were actually creating. And so, Bernie Sanders saying we're going to have all these green jobs, that's just a lie. They won't exist. The green job will be one person digs a hole and the next person comes along and fills it up. That'll be the green job that exists under Bernie Sanders, because the green jobs are a myth.
Now, what I've seen down here in a place called Willacy County, Texas, which is basically all wind farms, I've seen that it has created jobs, like I said, for about 4 or 5 people, and they're driving around this county in Mercedes-Benz and BMWs, and they appear to be about 25 years old. But other than that, everyone else is really hurting. So it's not creating jobs.
And the challenge with wind farms in particular is there's been a number of stories recently about the when the wind turbines break down, it's not cost effective to repair them. And so they just sit there broken. And they're literally massive graveyards of these big wings, these big turbines that spin around. And when the system breaks, they literally get taken down and they're being buried in the ground. So you're taking extremely precious metal in terms of rare earth metals that build these, that make up these turbines. And after a short while, when the system breaks, these turbines, then they're not good for anything, and so they end up being essentially buried along with thousands of other ones, and it's just a bad deal. And the main thing, the way you know it's a bad deal, is we've been stuck with a wind production tax credit to encourage production of wind energy. And that wind production tax credit, the only reason it exists is because Warren Buffett and people like him would never invest in wind energy if not for the tax credit. They're buying the tax credit. The wind energy is not viable as a production, doesn't produce enough energy per the cost of actually creating the turbines. So that's the problem. It's a failed technology. It's a 21st century adaptation of 15th century technology, and it doesn't meet the needs, and it's not reliable. So so basically we're wasting our money. And Bernie Sanders would promote that. He would do more of that.
Okay, now changing the subject, some big news out of the DOJ today. Want to explain what we've just learned?
Well, it's pretty disturbing. They have announced, the Department of Justice has announced that they are not going to bring charges against former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, for lying to the FBI and to investigators, as well as leaking the documents, FBI documents, to the media, both of which he's been caught red-handed on. Let's just put this into perspective. We have Andrew McCabe, who is at the epicenter of the attack on the Trump administration in terms of trying to take down the Trump administration. He gets a pass for lying to the FBI and for leaking information to the press. Roger Stone, the same DOJ, is trying to get a 7 to 9 year sentence against Roger Stone for effectively for telling the long deposition, long testimony before Congress, he got something wrong. He corrected it after the fact, and so went after him because he lied to Congress for 5 hours, and in terms of before he corrected it, and then and then he said something to somebody who was testifying that was viewed as a threat. So they say he's tampering with witnesses, but the witness he supposedly tampered with says he took it as a joke and was never threatened. So Roger Stone, 7 to 9 year sentence is what the DOJ geniuses wanted to do. And Andrew McCabe, who was at the epicenter of attacking our very democracy, no, we pay no attention to Andrew McCabe. I'm telling you right now, if somebody isn't perp walked, if one of these DOJ actors, one of the FBI guys isn't perp walked and isn't put under the in the federal court and forced to defend themselves, and that doesn't happen, I don't know how America can look at our Department of Justice as having anything to do with justice, because it's very clear that they protect their own, and I'm a little sick of it. And if you happen to be on the other side, if you happen to be a Republican, you get ramrodded and you get treated as if you were less than a citizen with less rights than anybody else. And if you happen to be one of the elites who are Democrat elites in this town, you can do anything you want with impunity. If Attorney General Barr, who I've been a gigantic defender of, if Attorney General Barr doesn't get this figured out, if there aren't people who broke the law perp walked, then I don't know how American system, people will lose faith in the American system of jurisprudence. And once you lose faith that the judicial system is fair and equitable, you have lost the essence of the fabric of our country, and it becomes every man for themselves. And the law is just whoever has the power exerts it, and whoever doesn't have the power just has to eat it. And that's where we're going. And Bill Barr needs to get in front of this, and we darn well better get some people perp walked, or else he needs to explain why they weren't perp walked.
Yeah, it makes you wonder which side Bill Barr is on. Is he at a point where he's afraid that his association with Trump, is seen as Trump's top ally, is actually hurting his reputation for the future? Maybe that's why he made the comments.
I don't care what his reputation is. The guy needs to do the job. And when you sit there and you take people who clearly violated the law, Hillary Clinton clearly violated the law, clearly violated the law related to classified information.
Yes.
There's no doubt. It is indisputable. Any other person would have been convicted by now and has already served their jail time if they'd done a tenth of what Hillary Clinton did. And yet she wanders around free talking about the ethics of the Donald Trump administration.
Yeah.
It is if anybody else had engaged in the scam that her and Bill Clinton did through the Clinton Foundation, if anybody else has shaken down foreign leaders for money, Hillary Clinton's one of the top contributors to the Clinton Foundation was the Ukrainian government. Okay? At the same time, Hunter Biden was getting his money. The Ukrainian government was paying the Clinton Foundation a bunch of money to make certain that they got coverage and that they were protection. It was protection money, just pure and simple. And the fact that nobody is paying a price for that is obscene.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of it. And we've been dealing with this. We've been fighting this battle for years now. And it's time for somebody to go to jail on the left. And quite honestly, if their laws are such that you don't have to go to jail for what they did, then I really have a hard time seeing why George Papadopoulos had to go to jail for lying for 18 days. I really fail to see why Roger Stone continues to be under scrutiny. Yeah. I don't know why Paul Manafort is sitting in jail right now. Every single person who they prosecute under this needs to be released, because if there's no downside for violating our basic principles of democracy by trying to upend the electoral process the way they did, to try to do a coup against the United States like they did. If there's no rules against that, if there's no repercussions for that, then there damn well better not be repercussions for somebody his sole problem was he was a friend of Donald Trump for 40 years, and they were trying to squeeze him to get him to say bad things against Trump so they could impeach Trump. That's the only reason Roger Stone was prosecuted. It's the only reason why he's in danger of going to jail, and it needs to be ended. It needs to be ended now.
Yeah, the Roger Stone thing, it does feel pretty heavily politicized, and we'll have to come out and say Paul Manafort was heavily politicized. These are political prisoners in America, right? You know, I guess we probably remember in 2016 when Donald Trump had one of his major debate moments that captured the attention, and he looked at Hillary and said, she said, "We can't have someone like this as president." He looked at her and said, "Because you'd be in jail." And maybe he's actually looking into Hillary. Just about everybody I know views Hillary as
Okay,
a bad person.
Listen, I don't have any illusion that anybody's looking at Hillary. Okay, the fact is, the people, the DOJ appears to be so polluted that the people who would look at Hillary don't have a capacity to see what happened. They excuse it, and so there's absolutely, I have no illusion on that. Here's what I do think: you have various actors who we know changed the FBI reports in the Michael Flynn case. Okay, that's Lisa Page. She changed one of the reports, and the changes she made were used to get Michael Flynn to plead guilty. So that is true. So, and that is a crime. So Lisa Page, one of the two starstruck lovers from the FBI, needs to go to jail. Peter Strzok needs to be brought in front of people and said, and put to, and if he did not do anything illegal, then we need to figure out how to make running a coup out of the intelligence services and the FBI illegal, because it should be. We need to have a look at Christopher Steele and the Democratic National Committee that paid for a dossier and used foreign information, foreign government resources to try to influence our election. That was the only foreign influence in the election. It was a Christopher Steele dossier paid for by the Democratic National Committee. We need to get to the bottom of that, and whoever was responsible needs to go to jail. So there's some things here that we've got to deal with, but today's just released information that Andrew McCabe apparently walks free is one of those things that you just sit there and you shake your head at the obvious double standard of application of justice in this town. And the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to be honest, in Washington, D.C., if you are a Republican who is being accused of corruption, you have almost no chance of acquittal. Okay. Because there's no Republicans in your jury pool. The Roger Stone jury pool, it's now come out that the foreman of the Roger Stone jury pool was a former Democratic candidate for Congress who on social media had attacked the President of the United States over Russiagate. Okay? This is somebody who, and this was the foreman of the jury. So you don't have you don't get to be tried by a jury of your peers. You're being tried by a jury who are professional haters of conservative limited government politics, and as a result, it is absolutely unfair. I'll offer one bit of evidence. Ted Stevens, senator from Alaska, was convicted the day of corruption charges the day before the election, where he was up for election in 2008, and the day before. And he was beaten in that election in Alaska, barely beaten, by Democrat Paul Begich. A year later, it turned out, and by the way, that gave the Democrats 60 votes in the Senate. A year later, it turned out that the prosecutors had cheated. They hadn't provided exculpatory information. They hadn't provided anything they should have provided. They were admonished by the judge, and Ted Stevens' conviction was overturned. He was exonerated. But the effect was still there because we still had 60 in the Senate. Nobody overturned the election in Alaska that was altered because of that. And it was because of a 96% Democrat jury pool in D.C. that made it so Ted Stevens didn't get a fair trial. It was because prosecutors are not compelled to actually tell the truth and face no penalty for not telling the truth and denying defendant rights. Because of those things, you got 60 Democrats in the Senate, you got Obamacare, you got the havoc that was wreaked by the Obama administration in the first 2 years. And it's all because of a jury in D.C. and a prosecuting team that was determined to get a conviction at any cost and didn't actually share information that they were supposed to share under the law with Ted Stevens that would have changed the outcome of that trial. That's politics in D.C. That's what's driving things. And Bill Barr needs to get his arms around this because he's got a rogue DOJ team and prosecutors who need to be flushed out of there. And we either need to shut the place down or we need to get a whole new crew in there who actually believe in justice as opposed to winning prosecutions for political purposes.
Well, do you think that the fact that something like the Andrew McCabe case will be portrayed in a certain way by the mainstream media and a lot will be left out? The
mainstream media will say, ha, 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 I told you so, he didn't do anything wrong. The Russiagate, all the conspiracy theories on Russiagate were wrong. When in fact, DOJ, everybody knows what he did, they admit it, they just decided not to prosecute. So their point will be, oh, see, nothing happened, nothing to see here. That will be MSNBC's headline. When in fact, the real story is, if you're a Democrat or you're doing the Democrats' bidding, the left's bidding, you have carte blanche authority to do whatever you want to do. And if you're actually standing up for freedom, you are subject to retaliation by those very prosecutors who are attempting to usurp the U.S. The freedoms that we are guaranteed here in the U.S. It is obscene. Once again, it is obscene what just occurred.
Okay, now I just want to change the subject here. Reuters is reporting 5,000 new coronavirus cases in China. Do you think that we're not hearing the full details about what's really happening with that disease and its spread in China? And here's another idea. Is it being exaggerated by our media as a distraction from what's really going on? Is the media using this as a distraction?
I don't know. I truly don't know. I think that there is a reason to believe that the coronavirus is very serious. I think there is a reason for people to be aware of it, and I think there's a reason if somebody's sick, don't go to work, or don't shake people's hands, and do elbow bumps if you need to. There's lots of ways to go here. I think people have to be aware that this is a communicable disease. And it does not appear to be airborne. It appears to be, through germs or not germs, but viruses on the hands of, if you cough into your hand and you have liquid from your cough and it goes in the hand, that you now have the virus in your hand. So don't shake somebody else's hand. Okay, so we have to be, I think it's a good, stock device Purell, but it is it's a problem. Now, the thing that I would be interested in is, what are the labs doing to try to isolate the virus and kill it in labs? What's happening in terms of on the science side to try to get our arms around this? Because it appears to be very dangerous. The good news is it does not appear to be at this juncture airborne, which means it's a lot less likely the contagion spreads slowly. And the numbers I really want to know is you can have 5,000 cases, but 4,900 of them recover and 100 die. That's different than 5,000 cases and 4,900 people die. So the real number that matters is what is the mortality rate from this? Because every year 10 to 12,000 people die from the regular flu in the United States alone. So we need to know what the mortality rate is. And that mortality rate will tell us if this is like a bad flu or if it's something that's much worse.
Okay, now one of the things we keep hearing is that, in fact, they've been saying this from the beginning, is that coronavirus is fatal in rare cases. So, perhaps that's...
Well, we'll see if that's true. That's something we don't know is true. What we do know is the doctor who called the whistleblower on the coronavirus and people were being lied to, that when he contracted, he died. We know that his wife contracted. She's in critically ill condition as of yesterday. She's pregnant with an 8-month-old child, and it's So she's 8 months pregnant, and so she's in a serious situation. So what we really don't know, because we're dependent upon reporting out of China, which is sketchy. We really don't know what the mortality rate is, and so that remains to be seen. But if the mortality rate, if people, that's a piece of the puzzle that I really would like to know. If there's 15 cases in the United States, which is what's been reported, what's the progress on those cases? Is everybody basically recovering after 30 days, or are we looking at a situation where, five of the people are terminal? We need to know that, because that puts it into perspective as to how serious this virus is in terms of being a pandemic.
All right, well, Rick, it looks like it's time for us to wrap up.
I'm not happy. This was the happiest one we've ever done. So on that note, Frank.
Yes.
Let me ask you a joke. I've got a joke for you.
Okay.
Okay? I got to come up with a joke while we do it. Okay, so here's the joke. What did one tonsil say to the other tonsil?
I don't know.
Better get dressed. The doctor's taking us out tonight.
Yeah, speaking of that, it's Valentine's Day. Everybody, please take your loved one out for dinner. Happy Valentine's Day. I got one for you. Rick, you ready?
I'm ready.
One snowman looks at the other snowman next to him and says, "Do you smell carrots?"
That's cold.
Yeah, that's cold. Get it? Ha ha ha. All right, we better get out of here. This is gonna get worse. This is gonna snowball for the worst.
You're gonna get this. Will be Dad Joke Central. We'll have to go off to a different YouTube channel and be Dad Joke Central. But while you're on, tell your friends to catch up with us on the YouTube channel. Subscribe so you're notified about when this is happening, and we will catch you next time.
They are hyper informative. Please check these out daily. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching.